I saw myself going, do you know what? Leadership is a real option for me. Policy that I use in my own recruitment when I'm looking to build my teams is the no asshole policy. Being thrown in at the deep end and figuring things out is probably the best way you can learn. People are your success for pricing. And if you can get the people aspects right and you can get people on board and buying into what you're trying to achieve, everything can happen and it can be a real success. You know, it's been 18 years in pricing, a fun 18 years. And I think my journey in pricing started much like I think many students of my time. You know, I did my degree in business administration and I majored in quantitative analytics. And then I did my master's degree immediately afterwards in information systems management. And I remember finishing and thinking, do you know, I really enjoyed my studies, you know, the strategy, marketing, law, obviously the numbers, and then, you know, tech. But then I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this? Because I knew I didn't want to go into just pure marketing. And I remember getting a call from a lovely lady from Hayes. I still remember her name, Jennifer. And she said, look, come down, let's talk about what you've studied and what you've enjoyed and let's see what the options are. And she gave me three options. One of them was a role at TUI, a commercial yield analyst role. And that started my career journey in pricing and revenue management and yield management. And look, I have to say it's been a wild ride ever since, and I've really enjoyed it. And I think one of the things that has been the greatest achievement for me is being able to go through different industries and not just sticking to the travel industry, which is a lot of fun, I have to say. But I've loved that I've challenged myself, and it's not just been pure revenue management, pure pricing, but I've led transformation projects. You know, I've built centers of excellence. So yeah, I'm really proud of my career, and I'm really excited to see where else it's going to go, particularly in what I'm doing now with Covetris. I think TUI was really the start of for me realizing how far I could push myself in pricing and actually how exciting it is. And it was actually just a few months into my role. And at TUI, I was responsible for ski and lakes. So I looked after for the ski region, Bulgaria, Serbia, and the Dolomites, so Italy. And we were going through our yielding process for the ski season for the year. And if you're doing any sort of pricing for ski, you've got to pay attention to what's going on with the weather. If there's no snow, you're going to have a bit, you know, some issues along the way. And I noticed actually for Camperovo, the snow wasn't falling and I had to yield. We needed to get people on seats on the plane and people in beds in the hotel. And I could see we weren't selling. And I remember thinking to myself, it's not going to be acceptable to not sell these holidays. And it was a Friday. My boss wasn't there. Our managing director wasn't there. So I had to take this decision, quite a large financial decision on my own. And I considered all the factors. You know, as long as we've got one person on the plane, we've got to pay taxes, we've got to pay fuel. So we needed to get people on there at all costs. So I thought, right, what about if we did this as a cost plus? So, you know, the cost plus a small buffer, make it really attractive for people to really come on this holiday. And I set it live on Friday. And this was the time before laptops were a thing. So I had to leave, went home, and it was the longest weekend I've ever experienced in my life. I was thinking, you know, have I made the right decision? You know, is the MD going to be in alignment with me? And I came in on a Monday, really eager, went to look at my seats and beds report, and we'd sold, right? We sold those holidays, but I still needed to get that sign off. And for me to see that my online manager and my managing director were really in alignment with what I'd done, they recognized that I'd considered all the factors. It was just so exciting and so thrilling. And I thought, you know what, I can do this. This is going to be, it's going to be an exciting journey. And look, I haven't looked back ever since. And for me, it's that, you know, I've got a healthy appetite for risk. And I think that time in TUI really helps me to develop that. I take the same approach to my career as I take with my life. I've got a real curiosity and a real excitement and wonder and joy for what I'm doing. So for me, you know, going between industries doesn't seem out of the ordinary. I'm hungry to learn and I'm really curious, and I do believe I can do it. For me, one of the things that I've really realized with pricing is regardless of the industry you're going into, everyone is dealing with exactly the same issue. Pricing is a pain. And it's usually a pain because people don't understand what it's truly there to do. You know, it's there to support the business, but it's also there to really support the customers and to keep, you know, customers coming back. And so for me, it's been really important to make sure that people truly understand what pricing can do for them. But it's also made me realize as well that there's just not enough being done to bring more people into the pricing field. I mean, it says a lot when there's one university in the world that offers a pricing degree, that one, which is, you know, unbelievable. Pricing usually gets what, maybe a few pages in your degree. And I see it as a responsibility onto myself as well to make sure that, I can really encourage people to consider pricing as a career path and not something that you just happen to fall into. And I think as well, one of the other things that is across the board, regardless of the industry, is the importance of people. People are your success for pricing. The number is a consequence of lots of other things working in the right way. And if you can get the people aspects right and you can get people on board and buying into what you're trying to achieve, everything can happen and it can be a real success. For me, it's been the most transformative organization I've worked for. I really developed as a person, and for me, it was really the first time I saw myself going, do you know what? Leadership is a real option for me. And there are a number of reasons for that. I think having a really good line manager helps. And, Bradley, he was incredible. And he saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself at the time. And he encouraged me to be involved in projects. He would put me in projects that, weren't involved. It wasn't part of my day-to-day role, but he could see that I'd be okay. And for me, actually being thrown in at the deep end and figuring things out is probably the best way you can learn. And it's something that I do with my own team as well. And also being in an environment where you're encouraged to grow and to grow professionally and personally as well, it really gives you a real safety net to be able to try new things, to be able to go into the office and know that there are courses going on. All you need to do is just walk into a room and be part of it. It's amazing that real freedom to really develop. And it really helps to develop that growth mindset as well. So for me, I'm constantly pushing myself because I know I've been in an environment where I was really pushed and I was okay and I grew from it. But in terms of leadership, so Steve Corfer, I will celebrate him as much as I can, because I think he's been such an incredible, he's a former CEO now, but at the time when he was the CEO at TripAdvisor, you could see he really cared about not just the business, but he really cared about the people in the business. He had a very clear policy, a policy that I use in my own recruitment when I'm looking to build my teams. It's the no arsehole policy. And he was very clear, there will be absolutely no arseholes working at TripAdvisor. Because you want to work with nice people, right? And so for me, that's how when I'm recruiting, I don't care how great you are technically in your job. If you're going to be difficult, and you're not going to be a nice person, there's absolutely no way you're entering into my team. So for me, that real strength in that policy, and you could see it through and through the business. It's the one organization where I can look back and go, do you know what? I made friends for life there because you were working with just really great people. And lastly, I think for me, what TripAdvisor also taught me about leadership is that high performance and having fun go hand in hand. Right? We were pushed to perform well and at a high level. And for me, the fact that you can do that whilst having so much fun, it's amazing. So for me, if you're in my team, we're going to work hard. We're a high performing team, but we're also going to make sure we have some fun along the way as well. So TripAdvisor, very, very special place in my heart. And I wish everyone could have the experience of working at TripAdvisor at some point in their career. It's twofold. There's the technical aspects of your role, and then there's the person, the you as well. And for me, it's really important that people can see that I'm credible in my expertise. And so when I'm joining a business, I make sure that I know my stuff, right? So you need to be a subject matter expert. And one of the things I make sure that people can see is that I'm very accurate in what I do. For a lot of things, you can say, okay, I've done it 80% of the way, let's just move fast. You can't afford to get anything wrong in pricing because it costs money. So for me, making sure that people see how thorough I am in how I work, and also the thinking behind what I'm doing is really important. I also like to humanize pricing. And so I don't go and throw numbers at people and go, hey, look at this is what we're doing and we're rolling with it. I don't care what you think. I want to have those conversations, right? I want to know what you think. I want to know what's bothering you about pricing. I want to know why you don't want to move forward. People can see that you're willing to have that conversation and you're compassionate and understanding about how they're feeling. That trust builds up quite quickly. And also, I'm a very keen listener. And sometimes people just want to vent, and that's okay. And I allow them to vent. I don't take anything personally, and I always say to people, I'm not precious about it. If you don't like it, you need to tell me why you don't like it. And so if you can show that you're someone who is good to work with, even if they don't agree with what you're wanting to do, they will trust in your expertise. I don't claim to know everything, particularly if I'm going into an industry that I've never worked in before. I'm coming with the pricing expertise, but I'm very clear to people, you are the expert in your industry. I want to learn from you as much as I hope you want to learn from me as well. And I think if you can show that balance in your thinking and in how you work, it really creates a great space to do great things and to really build that standing in that new organization. Challenges for me as a woman in leadership, I think will be similar to many women. It's, often people will undermine your expertise because they think you don't belong in that space. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. For me, it's twofold because I'm often the one of or the only of in my position. So I try and have a very acute awareness of the environment and situation I may be walking into. I don't operate on that frequency, but I think you have to have great self-awareness. So, when you're being faced with people undermining your judgment, or if you're being faced with often, someone explaining to you something that you could probably explain better. I'm very confident in my own ability and in my expertise, and I'm also aware of where there are developmental opportunities available as well. So I don't take anything personal. For me, it's when it steps into the realm of affecting my ability to do my job, where I do have to pull someone, I have no problem pulling someone to the side and going, hey, look, here are the rules of engagement. You have to be prepared for this. The more and more you work in leadership, the more and more you have an awareness of the things that you're going to face. So you can't walk into something blindly, and in some respects, actually, you can be surprised because, look, it shouldn't still be happening in 2025, but unfortunately it does. But one of the key decisions you're going to have to make as a woman in leadership is whether you're in the right environment. So I always tell people, pick your environment very carefully. So just have great self-awareness, know what's coming ahead, and be prepared to have tough conversations. And also master the art of assertiveness. There's nothing wrong in being assertiveness. Sometimes people don't like it, but you need to be able to set the boundaries for yourself. With pricing, this is going to happen a lot. It's such an emotive topic, and it's probably the most emotive topic you're going to find in any organization. So there'll be healthy tension. I like to call it healthy tension, right? That's something that will always be there. But what you need to be able to decipher is whether that skepticism or that tension is personal or professional. Professional skepticism, absolutely okay. Personally, I love a skeptic in pricing because it means I can talk more and more about pricing. We can have those real conversations. The real issue is how that skepticism is communicated or in a way that, doesn't foster, a good relationship. I have absolutely no problem pulling someone to the side and calling them out on it. And often people don't like being called out on things. So it's really important you do it and do it fast. And I go, look, I'm more than happy to have this conversation and I'm open to hearing your views, but what I'm not open to is you communicating that in a way that doesn't foster us having a long-term relationship in terms of how we're working together. If it's personal skepticism, I'll be completely honest with you, if it's not harming my ability to get on with my job, I personally don't have time for it. So it's you have to be able to understand the context in which someone is providing that skepticism. So understand the context of it and deal with it appropriately. You have to be prepared to go on a very steep and deep learning curve. And that's in regards to the industry you're stepping into. So if it's an industry you haven't worked in before, do your research before you start. At least have some basic context of what's going on in the industry, the competitive landscape, really understanding what the strategy is of the business. Make sure you do that groundwork before you start. For me, also, one of the other things that I do, if I'm in a meeting and someone's talking about something that I haven't heard about before, I'll just make a note of it. I don't want to disturb the meeting. I'll make a note of it, but then after the meeting, I'm going to go and do my research, speak to some people and really try and understand what's going on. One of the things I also make sure I do is to ensure that people know that I'm the person to come to if you have any queries about pricing. Because typically, if you're going in and you're going in a leadership perspective, you are that subject matter expert. So you need to make sure you establish yourself in that way as well. And also, one of the core things that has been really, really important is listening is so powerful. Because if you can listen and you can understand the context of what's going on, you can align your approach very, very quickly. And sometimes it's just having those coffee catch-ups. It's just bumping into someone in leadership and going, oh, what's going on? And just really build the context around that. Don't be afraid to ask the questions. People really appreciate someone who knows what their limitations are because they want to help as well. There's a real strength in being able to say, look, I don't know about this, so can you teach me? Because I want to make sure that when I'm doing my work, I can adapt it to what's really going on within this industry. I think your line manager is going to be incredibly key in this. Usually, when you start a new role, you would already have some meetings booked in the calendar to meet key people in the business. And in those conversations, if there's something that comes up that you're finding interesting, ask them, who else in your team can I have a conversation with about this? Or who else in the business can I have a conversation with about this? And actually, what you find is it just begins to snowball. And next thing you know, you're speaking to so many different people in all different aspects of the business. So I'll encourage you to just start with those early conversations and ask, who else can I talk to? I'll also really, really recommend you try as much as possible to get time with your leadership team. The work you're doing needs to align with what they're doing and the vision they have for the business. So if you can get those meetings in early, you can really start to align in terms of what direction your work is going in, but also who they recommend you should be aligning yourself with as well. So your line manager is really key in this. Make sure you utilize them in the right way. I think people underestimate how much someone wants you to say, hey, can I present in your team meeting? Right. So I will often say, hey, can I come and tell you all what's going on in pricing? 20 minutes, half an hour, have those open conversations. You're piquing people's interest and people want to get involved. And equally, I will flip that around and say, hey, can you come and present in my team meeting? It would be great for us to hear what's going on. So for me, you're naturally then building up advocates because people are, you're putting pricing on the radar of so many people. Get people involved as well. Make sure you can engage people in the right way. Sometimes it's just a coarsely email of, hey, look, this is what we've been working on in pricing. Other times it may be a lunch and learn. Offer to speak if there's some sort of internal conference going on. Can I present and let you guys know what's going on in pricing? So use all the opportunities available to yourself to make sure people know what's going on in pricing. Because if they can understand it, they're going to be cheering for you all the way, because pricing doesn't just benefit you, it benefits the whole business. And consequently, it benefits them as well. So make sure you're getting your voice out there and you're getting involved in what's going on with other teams. First one, most important, is be a subject matter expert. If you're going into a business as a leader in pricing, typically the buck stops with you. You are it. You can't turn to someone and say, actually, what should I do in pricing here? It is you. So really make sure you are that subject matter expert, but make sure people know as well that you're that subject matter expert. So that goes back to what I just said before around joining team meetings and telling people what's going on in pricing. Make sure people know that you are the face of pricing. Second thing to do is to make sure you can show people what you can do for them. Take the lead. Often when people go into roles, they go and do these really big, massive projects to try and, really put their name down. And unless you've been asked to do that, I wouldn't say that's the best approach. Have those conversations with the sales teams, with the marketing teams, the product teams, and understand what their issues are. Sometimes there's some really big but quick wins sitting on the table. And if you can solve those problems for people, I mean, the result, it's a win-win all around, right? It's a win for you, it's a win for them. Third thing I would say is be confident, right? You absolutely have to be confident. And if you focus on being that subject matter expert and truly believing that you are, that confidence is going to naturally come. Fourth thing I would say is foster really strong relationships. It's going to be one of the most important things you can have in pricing, particularly when you're facing so much pushback. If you can lean on those relationships, it really helps to move things forward. The more advocates you have, the quicker things can move along and the smoother it is. And then lastly, and most importantly, have a vision. You have to have a vision and you need to know how to get there. No one is going to follow anyone who doesn't have a vision and doesn't know how to get there. So make sure you really consider what it is you're trying to achieve and how you're going to achieve it. And if you can do those things, I think you'll be all right. Breadth and depth of expertise is really important. That's what I focused on in my career. I focused on building that breadth and depth of my knowledge in pricing, but not just pricing, revenue management, yield management. And then it really shows in how I work, because I'm leading with expertise, right? I'm not leading with a false confidence, but I'm also leading with a very focused, performance-based approach, because I also have that experience in revenue management. I also have that experience in yield management. And so that has given me so much confidence. So I'm unwavering. If someone is questioning my reason for being there, I'm unmoved in it because I know I belong where I am. You can't tell me otherwise. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is find your inspiration in leadership. Some people go down the coaching route. Some people go down the mentorship route. I've gone down the route of sports. I've really leaned on things that are important to me and my own personal life. And sports is really at the front and center of my life. We're very much a sporting household. And I've grown up playing sports, and now I watch a lot of sports, particularly rugby and Formula One. And I think there's so many great examples of leadership in action. And so I look to those leaders and go, look, I really like how they lead, and I really like the results that are coming out of their leadership. In rugby, we've got so many great examples. So Owen Farrell, former captain of the England rugby team, really led through belief in his team and pushing through when things were tough. In Formula One, Toto Wolff, goes without saying, he's an incredibly strong but firm leader who really believes in the team that he has around him. But then you also have leaders like Steve Bruffett, current manager of the England team, he's all about performance. If you want to be part of this team, you need to perform. So I think if you can bring all those things together, there's just so much inspiration. So I look to sports, and it's something that I'll continue doing throughout my career. A wise man, he told me, you have to look up and look at your journey and see how far you've come. Because I think particularly for women, we have our head down so much, really pushing through, trying to get to the next level, trying to break through all these barriers, that we don't stop and look up and go, do you know what? I've actually come quite far in this. And so, throughout your journey, enjoy the journey, be grateful for it. For me, I have an attitude of gratitude. So even through all the difficult times, I'm grateful for it all because I know it's benefited me in the end. So just don't forget to look up and enjoy the journey. Sometimes we're so focused on the end point that we forget how great that journey has been, even through the hard times.